From Geppetto Studios in New Freedom, Pennsylvania, welcome to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, your home for inclusive, positive geek culture, where we talk about movies, comics, music, books, and whatever else we feel like. Please welcome your host.
You only get to be a prodigy for so long, and eventually then you're just a guy in your 20s.
Well, I've wasted my prodigy years.
Brad Mendenhall.
Hey kids, it's episode 279 of the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast. I'm Lyndon Mendenhall. My dad asked me to record the intro because I am cooler than he is. In this episode, writer, director, producer Luke Allen returns with Gareth Thomas to discuss their upcoming project, Henry House. This is a really cool project that has been a little snakelet. The link for its Indiegogo will be shared on the Cosmic Geppetto Facebook and Twitter pages. Luke and Gareth are great guys with a lot of drive and talent. Let's work together to make this thing happen. Anywho, let's get on with the show.
From across the pond, he's returning, dear friend, who's become a dear friend via podcasting, and writer, producer, director, all-around good guy, Luke Allen. Luke, how you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, it's not been as long as it has been the past couple of times I've been on the show. I think I've been finally in your last few episodes have I broken my once a year appearance streak. Or did I do that last year? I don't know, something. I've lost track of time, but it's lovely to be back.
And you brought a friend. Introduce your friend. He's been here before.
Yeah, so I'm here with Gareth Thomas, who is the writer, director, eventual showrunner of Henry House TV pilot, which I have the privilege of being production manager for.
Nice to be here, guys. Nice to be back. Nice to for you to think of us, Brad. So, any kind of support and exposure for Henry House is great. You've always looked after Luke before with covering his projects, and I really appreciate you doing the same for us.
Well, tell us a little bit about Henry House. You said it's a pilot. You're working on this. So what's the elevator pitch for this program?
Okay, that would be a big elevator. Henry House. It's a comedy drama set in a care home in a place called Wrexham, which is in Wales for a lot of you. So your listeners know where that is. Wrexham, of course, is very big in America right now because of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney taking over the Associated Football Club there. But I will stress that this was always going to be set in Wrexham. It's been planned for a long time, so we're not just jumping on the bandwagon like the rest of the world is. We promised that Henry House was set in Wrexham before all of that.
Deadpool's jumping on your bandwagon.
Exactly. That's what I thought too. But yeah, so the story of Henry House, in general terms, we are celebrating the hard work, the sort of the unsung heroes of the care system, the carers, and also the residents of these care homes who don't get as much support as they should do during the pandemic. Certainly this side of the pond, there was an awful lot of coverage of how badly supported they were by the government. They weren't given the support they should have been during lockdown and all the rest of it. And as we've come out of that, we think that we're amazed and we're very lucky in many ways that no one's still thought to do a comedy drama set in a care home. We had Ricky Gervais's Derek a few years back, but that really wasn't the same in tone. It's very much a drama. We tell real stories. It's hard hitting, but we also smile and laugh along with these residents and these carers. So beyond that, we tackle how the red tape of the care industry and just of the world in general, I suppose, is stopping sensible people making the right decisions because they've got to go through hoops to get the most basic of things done. We live in a world now where teachers are told they can't put plasters on crying children because then when they take the plaster off, it counts as abuse. That's the world we live in. And Henry House is flying in the face of that and saying that, sometimes just let good people trust their own judgment. And that's the essence of the show. But the story behind the pilot in particular, revolves around this new ditzy airhead of a receptionist who joins our care home, and she, quite frankly, is a bit useless at what she does. She's not very good at her job. Are you guys familiar? I'm sure you will be with a character called Bridget Jones. You know who Bridget Jones is?
Oh yeah. The Helen Fielding wrote, I guess it was 2 or 3 books, and then there have been 3 movies with Renee Zellweger.
That's her, yeah, yeah. So basically, she is our Bridget Jones, and she gets everything wrong. She's a comedy character that we all fall in love with, because who hasn't been late to work? Who hasn't said the wrong thing to the wrong person, and meant with the best of intentions, made bad boyfriend or girlfriend choices at some point? That's our main character, called Izzy Orchard, played by an undiscovered actress of immense talent, who we're very proud of, called Orla Jones. But she is going to be playing opposite someone who a lot of people will have heard of, at least on our side of the pond. You guys maybe not quite so familiar, but he's a legendary personality on this side of things, called Peter Purvis, who was the presenter of Blue Peter, a very, very famous children's television show in England. And he's having a 50-year comeback.
Yeah, one of his last acting roles was a companion in Doctor Who in, I think it was 1965 to 1966, or that sort of time. He was a companion to the first Doctor. I might have got the years slightly off, and someone's going to get angry at me. But yeah, that's probably his most known acting role. So we are honoured that he's willing to come back to acting for our little Wrexham pilot.
Absolutely. And then the character he plays, this is where I mentioned a bit ago that we're going to be tackling some very serious subjects. He's going to be playing someone who's coming to terms with the fact that he's a former RAF pilot, who's now getting older in life, who's used to being in control, used to being something of a hero, very independent, but he's now faced up with the fact that he's been diagnosed with dementia, which is getting the better of him. So we're tackling dementia, and also the long-term effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, which he also has from his time serving. And the story really is built around this unlikely friendship that developed between this ex-RAF pilot, who's a very challenging resident now. He's not an easy man to get on with, versus this ditzy airhead of a receptionist. And somehow she can get through to him when the qualified carers around her, whose job it actually is to get through to him, they can't get through to him. But somehow the receptionist, who everyone thinks is useless, can. And it's about how sometimes you don't need a textbook, you don't need a qualification, you need a good heart. You need to have some kind of synergy, be able to relate to what someone's been through. And there are reasons why Izzy can relate to him without spoiling things before we've even shot it. But yeah, that's essentially the story we're looking to tell.
It's, first off, that's amazing that you were able to, that Peter Purvis is joining your program. It's a brilliant concept, because I'm Generation X. I am, the generation after the baby boomers, and the baby boomers are in their 70s, 80s now, and something that a lot of people my age and younger can deal with is having parents, grandparents who are getting to their 70s and 80s. Health is declining, and I've had a grandmother who had to be put into care, and a father-in-law who is dealing with a lot of things you're talking about. He's in memory care right now and is dealing with the dementia issues, and it's something that we can all deal with, because we can all see loved ones getting older, and the people that raised us and the people that we looked for stability and strength, and seeing them weak, and it's a very human thing. So you can see the drama, and then there is just a lot of inherent humor, sometimes a little bit of gallows humor involved with that as well, because I see the people who have worked at these facilities, and in general, all well-meaning, but they're not getting paid enough. Sometimes they're not quite trained enough, and sometimes it's the person who's changing the bed sheets or emptying the trash, all of a sudden have a lot of expectations and responsibilities foisted upon them just by the proximity to the issues. and you can see a lot of humor where people are in over their heads, and they're young, and they don't have their own lives together, much less taking care of the lives of people who are in a very scary, sad, crazy in a lot of ways time of their life, where they're coming to sort of the final curtain, and everyone wants to deal with that with dignity and with understanding, and sometimes we fail in that, and in that failure and in that struggle can be a lot of drama and a lot of humor.
Absolutely.
Was there a specific incident or a personal story that you want to share that inspired this, or what was the inspiration for going on this path? That you're right, it's not something touched upon very often.
Yeah, sure. So it was. I mean, there's everyone's got a different answer to this depending on when they came on board. I know. Like Luke's earliest memory of getting involved, but in terms of the overall project from the get go, we were, as in Rocking Horse Media, we were working on a autism feature film, which was about anti-bullying, but ultimately it was about autism acceptance, which never unfortunately saw the light of day for a number of reasons. It was a very ambitious project to produce that where we were at the time with the resources that we had. And then when we had to take about a year out, to be honest, because things just got too much and we weren't able to produce what we wanted to produce, and we had to there was a lot of soul searching was done at that time, trying to sort of get our heads around what we wanted to come back and what we wanted to do, what we felt capable of doing. And when we did come back from that after this year out, we felt that we don't feel that it's right that we just come back in. We haven't earned the right to produce that feature film just yet. We let some people down along the way who obviously quite rightly got expectations it was going to become something, and then unfortunately it didn't. So we felt, well, what happens in that? Is there any sort of one factor, one element of that story we could take and turn into something else or something fresh, which is perhaps more manageable, more sort of locally centric? And there was one very brief scene or a couple of scenes where our main character with autism, she ends up being put into essentially a residential care home for a very brief amount of time. We felt, I'll tell you what, why don't we go into that care home at a different time period of time, so it's not linked with that film at all, but explore what that care home would have been if we stayed there for more than a couple of scenes. Find out who the staff are, find out who runs the place, find out who's always late for work, find out what the residents are like, what their bad habits are, what their things that make them who they are. And let's just try and turn that into a story of its own. And from that, it really has just evolved from one thing to another. We were then going to make the project, this potential pilot of a TV show, all about the manageress of the care home, the person who runs the care home, who is like and still is a no nonsense northerner who won't take no rubbish from anybody. But if you prove yourself to her, she's very maternal and she'll have your back. It worked as a concept. I think it was a strong strategy to structure the show around. And then we came to audition for the support role of a receptionist. And as I've already pitched to you who the main character now is, you probably worked out where I'm going with this, is that once we auditioned this for this role, the individual we gave the part to, this Orla Jones, who no one had ever heard of, she turned up, did her thing, and her audition was so spellbinding. She was so incredible with limited material, really, because she was only meant to be a small part. A couple of funny lines at the start or the end of an episode. That was it. She was there to just to sort of pad out the cast. And the ability that we saw on that day made me realise that we would be mad if we didn't build the show around her and around her character. And so we made some massively brave decisions to restructure the entire pilot. I rewrote the entire script and made her the lead. Changed the title of the show because it was named after the manageress, Karen, to begin with. So we reworked it, called it Henry House instead.
Which I think was a real save, because Karen as a title had more connotations than we wanted.
Yeah, and on this side I'm not sure if it's a thing in America, but over here a Karen is considered to be someone who complains a lot.
Oh yeah, my son just called my wife a Karen not too long ago. That did not go over well.
Yeah, exactly. So we felt that we needed to. We didn't do it for that reason, because we did it because we found someone who is just such a better. Both the actress playing Karen now, I will add, we brought her in later on, so it's no reflection on her. She's an incredible talent. But at the time, we were looking at this new actress we brought in, who was blowing everyone away, and comparing her with the existing cast we had. And it's common knowledge now that I looked at it and thought, she is so much better than what we've got. If we don't make this all about her now, then we're not going to get greenlit, because she sometimes you don't realize how good or bad something is until you've got something better or worse to compare it to. And when Orla turned up, we realized that she was the only one out of the cast we had at that time that was capable of taking us where we needed to go. She showed us what the standard really was. So we made these massive wholesale changes, and we moved a lot of people on, which obviously was a risk. And then we rebuilt very much with her as the lead, with her at the top of the tree. And we haven't looked back since. And I honestly believe that the likes of Peter Purvis, we've also brought on another national treasure in this country called Annette Badland, who's a very, very well-known TV figure over here. People like that, they wouldn't have come on board if Orla Jones wasn't leading it, because they based that opinion on what they saw her do in the build-up. So we've never regretted that decision, but at the same time, it was a massively risky decision, because it could have backfired. She was Orla's only 21 now. She was 20 at the time. So to restructure your entire project, and arguably your business, because this was the biggest project for that business, around a 20-year-old who no one's heard of, could have completely gone the other way. But thankfully, it's worked out, and she's now just got herself a significant role all summer long in Legally Blonde the musical at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which she's been dreaming of since she was 7 years of age. And anyone listening to this who's an aspiring actor, who's dreamt of being an actor, just dreamed of getting paid to do it, because I mean, everyone thinks that actors dream of being in Hollywood and stuff, and we all dream of that too. But first and foremost, you dream of just getting to do what you love and get paid to do it. And she's at 21 has already proven herself beyond what we're doing to be able to do that. So she now gets paid to be a professional actress. So I like to think that every decision we made around that restructure has been justified.
I grew up in a place where they told you what to chase, told you how to run the race. Every move was on the page, but I didn't like their way. Had to fight and misbehave, had to find a way to change.
And it doesn't have to be a lot of money. You just want to be paid something. I remember I've acted in the past. I still do some dinner theater stuff, and I remember that I stage managed a show. I hate stage managing, but I did it because my friend was directing. And I remember at the end of the program, at the last night of the show, the director handed me an envelope, and I opened it. It was like $40. It was nothing, but it was like, oh my god, I got paid. A lot of credit, I think, would have to be given to you. Has to be given to you guys, because there are stories all throughout Hollywood of programs that didn't figure it out until much later who the real star is. And the example that comes to mind, the 80s program Family Ties, which was the big breakthrough show for Michael J. Fox. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with that program. It wasn't a smash hit. It was a successful show, and I don't know how well it translated outside of the United States.
I know of it, but I couldn't tell you a thing about it.
I've heard of it, but I haven't actually seen it.
Well, what was interesting is the original concept for that program. It was all about the parents, and they were former hippies that were now middle class suburbanites with 3 kids, and one of the kids was very right wing, while they grew up hippie liberals. And they had one son that was right wing, that was Michael J. Fox, and they had one daughter who was very materialistic, played by Justine Bateman, and then they had Tina Yothers, who was sort of the youngest daughter, who was just the youngest daughter. And what was funny is it was all supposed to be about the parents, and they quickly realized that Michael J. Fox, and on paper you don't think Michael J. Fox should never have become a star. He was very short, very slight, good-looking guy, but not he wasn't Brad Pitt. He wasn't George Clooney. He didn't have knock you over great looks. But he had this amazing charisma, and if you ever have a chance, watch clips from it. He had the most amazing comic timing I've ever seen someone have. Partway through the first season, they realized they had to completely redo the show, where it was all about Michael J. Fox, who and everyone else became supporting players and boosting his performance, to the point where there have been discussions that it got a little testy behind the scenes, because imagine if you were one of the actors playing the parent and you thought you have this show. It's like, no, you really don't. You're just there to set up Michael J. Fox with great punchlines, for his great punchlines. And you guys were able to realize, like, oh, we got something special here. Charisma and talent and that it factor, that wow factor, they don't come by easily. And realizing immediately, let's redo the show, or else, even if it had caught on at the original concept, then you have to do that slow reconfiguration, which always seems to suck the life out of a program when you do that, because you don't have the good base for it. And people are always like, hey, wait a minute, isn't this supposed to be about Karen? How come I'm watching the secretary? She's much more talented. She's a more interesting character, and she has charisma out the wazoo. But still, isn't this supposed to be about someone else? And it's a really smart doing that immediate course correction before the die is cast.
Yeah, well, I remember. So I was lucky enough to be attached when we did that first audition back in October 2021, and Gareth, myself, and NASA Amy, who has also been on the show before, we have a group chat which very often was discussing storylines for then Karen, now Henry House. Late night, midnight voice notes and things have just had this idea, and discussing it. And ever since that audition with Orla getting the part, we just all had ideas for stories about Izzy. And then it'd be like, oh, hang on, but what does Karen do? Oh, hang on. And obviously, like, now everyone has got their storylines. You're not going to watch the show and Karen's just like stood in the background not doing anything. But it just very quickly felt like, just upon seeing that performance, we just all wanted to tell stories about her, and we realized this isn't like one-off B plots. This is the main story, and that's carried through. And when Peter auditioned for the role of Paul, he did say that doing the scene with Orla as Izzy was the point in which he realized he wanted to do this.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I think, Brad, you made a really good point just a moment ago about with the Michael J. Fox example, that because it wasn't set up as that, then it caused some potential political behind-the-scenes issues afterwards. Is that whilst it meant some difficult, with the Orla situation, whilst it meant some difficult conversations initially, because there was someone playing Karen who was already attached, and I had to then sit them down and say, we're going to go in a different direction, and those conversations are never easy. But if we hadn't done that, then, for instance, now, and part of the reason that personally, I always make sure we promote Orla all the time. We've been talking, we get a new website developed at the moment. I said I need Orla Jones to be all over that website. And the reason for that is that when people come in to become part of it, they initially know what they're buying into. There's no opportunity for them to get the wrong idea and think, oh, I could be the star of this. Like, no, we've got a star. You can be part of it, and we'll be grateful for your involvement, and you'll get your moments. Like in any show, you get your B plot lines, your C plot lines, and even those support roles will have their time when they have their own storylines. So there's still opportunity there. But the great thing about what we did now is that they now know, full stop. Like Peter Purvis, we're grateful to have him, but he knows that he is second bill to Orla Jones, and he accepts that. And because he buys into the material and the potential for the show, and he recognises that she's the future of the show, she's the longevity, and I've got more chance of getting greenlit if she's the star. Once people buy into that, you don't have those issues backstage anymore like we would have done. So I think that was a really good example you brought up. And if we hadn't done what we had, I think we'd be in exactly the same situation as you're describing.
It's a real challenge, and there have been many shows that have realized, George Clooney. Uh, he was sort of a working actor for a long time. He would appear on Rose. He had a recurring role on Roseanne, on Facts of Life, a lot of sitcoms throughout, because he had good timing. And uh, the agents and the producers are smart. It's like, okay, let's not try to reconfigure these existing programs so he's the star, even though he has, obviously it's George Clooney. All he is star power, especially back then. But let's give him his own projects, and until they found the right one. I'm really first fascinated by the process because we and you sort of touched upon this where you were trying to do your feature film, and it sounds like that project was very big, and it's hard to do a big project. And you found something that was a little bit more manageable, and also it sounds like something more. I'm sure you could do a feature film of this. There's certainly a feature film there, but when you talk about the project, and I'm sure it's very different in a lot of ways, but it does feel like going back to the 70s, even the program MASH. Now that took place in Korea in a uh, field hospital, but you had a lot of comedy and a lot of gallows humor, but you also had so many opportunities for drama because every week there'd be a new patient, a new situation. It sounds like you have a lot of opportunities for that.
Yeah, the care homes platform is definitely built. If you're staying within that care home environment, it's a perfect setup for series rather than a film. Even with things like, say, you wanted to get a guest star in, but you could only have them in for one episode because of either the finances of it or because of their availability. Things like respite within the care industry, when people who are struggling to look after their loved ones, they don't send them into a care home permanently, but they'll just, they'll go in for a weekend at a time or whatever. Things like the very real respite sort of process in the care industry, we could utilize that for guest stars and things. So it's a really good system for that, and I think that's why it works better as a series than it does as a feature film. Although that's ironic because our pilot is feature length, but that's a totally incidental thing.
And to what you was kind of saying about the comedy drama balance is when Gareth first pitched Henry House to me, which was in a Pizza Hut the night before we began filming on Reduced to Clear. The thing that sold me on it was that Gareth described it as a show that celebrates the mundane, and I feel like it truly is a reflection of real life. Real life isn't a gritty melodrama. Real life is a comedy drama. Horrible things happen and funny things happen, and sometimes they're the same thing. And I think it's, we're not laughing at the horrible things, but we laugh through problems. And I think, you can have emotional storylines, but it's more raw and more real when there's comedy added to it. And so a show that just reflects normal life is what I found kind of so exciting.
I'm not in love with the state of a lot of drama right now because, and the best example I can think of this is somebody referred me to the new HBO show Perry Mason. It's produced by Robert Downey Jr. and excellent lead actor whose name's completely escaping me. And I watched the first episode or two, and it was just relentlessly humorless and maudlin and depressing. And I just felt like I was beat up after watching an hour of it. And I look back on some of my favorite dramas that I've watched over my life, and going back anything from NYPD Blue in the '90s. I was a big fan of the show Justified, and these were these were shows that they certainly were dramatic and had sad dramatic things to the point where it almost became, and it's sort of the thing with any drama, if you watch because they have to keep throwing stuff at the main characters, you see the main characters have gone through way too much for any sane person to go through. But because those shows always had humor and a little lightness spread about that balance works. And I think there's a real place for something. And you're not presenting your show as a straight drama by any stretch, but having that mix of comedy and drama, because life isn't just a series of oppressive things that you have to watch your main characters withstand. While dramatic things can happen there, and I've spent a decent amount of time in retirement communities, watching after my grandmother or my father-in-law, and there certainly is humor there, and there's laughter, and having that mix, I think, is so invaluable.
No, I agree. I completely agree. Yeah, and I suppose the making of Henry House has been a mixture of drama and comedy as well. To be honest, in as much as you've kindly allowed us to sort of talk about the good and how it started, which I think has been an opportunity to distract ourselves from what's happened more recently. And it wouldn't be right to come on the show and talk about Henry House without explaining about the real dramas behind the scenes, which is what led us to where we are now. In that we did begin filming. We filmed for 3 months. The best part of Peter Purvis's 50-year comeback was on. Everyone believed we had this massive crew of people all doing it for love and expenses. And 3 weeks before we were due to finish filming, Luke was off on the one weekend, bless him, he wasn't production in the only weekend he wasn't there. And Peter Purvis, very, very unfortunately, and it really could have happened to anyone, had an innocuous fall at home, which, of course, you've got to remember the guy's 84 as well. So any fall is a worrying one at that age. And he broke his wrist in 2 places. And because of the fact that he lived 4 hours away, so he couldn't drive for a start, we obviously filmed things out of sequence like anyone does these days in TV and film. So continuity was out the window. By the time he recovered from his injury, and bear in mind he had another operation which was already planned, and then I mentioned before that Orla had been cast in Edinburgh Fringe all summer, I wasn't going to have my 2 leads back in the same room for 6 months. And 3 weeks away from finishing a 3-month shoot, we've had to face facts, me and Luke and Orla in particular, have had to have very, very difficult conversations with each other and with the rest of the cast and crew that we're going to be forced to reshoot the entire thing from scratch in 6 months' time, including refinancing it from scratch. We got that close, Brad, to finishing the job that all of us at one point, if we weren't honest, probably thought this is a bit of a pipe dream here, and we turned that pipe dream into a reality, and now we've got to do it all over again.
Yeah, it's an honour, that we've gone to every member of the cast and crew, from runners and extras that it's their first project to the national treasures who had already finished doing their stuff, and they're all willing to come back. And some of the people listening might be wondering, why can't we just pick up where we left off? But on a project to the scale and to the budget that we're working on, continuity of 6 months is too big a risk. People go on holiday and get tan and they look a little bit different. We had a hurdle midway through production when one of our lead actors got a haircut that accidentally went too short, and we had to wait a month before we could film anything more with him. So, if that happens over the course of the filming, to throw 6 months on it, we can't risk anything. So, yeah, it's terrifying. We've got to try and find between £20,000 and £30,000 somewhere. So if anyone's listening has got that, down the back of the sofa or anything,
We do have a crowdfunding campaign which is live now. Which if anyone wants to support that on Indiegogo, just search for Henry House. Here's one we nearly made earlier, which is a reference probably very few people listening may get because it's a Peter Purvis Blue Peter reference, but it's all going to the same place because we do quite literally have to make it all over again. But we were very, very touched. Luke's mentioned it there, really, that the only good thing to bad things happening is if you find out how good your team are, you find out who your friends are, and not only has everyone stayed, more people have joined, which I find so bizarre. We're quite honest and open about the fact that everything's at stake right now. In the past, and this is new for me because I'm normally we all are so forthright, so confident that we're gonna, maybe we don't know how we're gonna make it, but we know we're gonna make it. that for the first time in all the years I've been trying to produce anything, is I've had to say to these people, because there's too many reputations on the line to as good as lie to them, is that we don't know for definite that we'll get to finish this now. We got so close. We're talking about getting greenlit, and we have every hope and very real belief we'll get there. But on paper, you've got to look at it and think, well, there's a lot of money to find there. If we don't climb the mountain, then we won't be making it. So nothing's guaranteed right now. It's not like, oh, if I don't donate, it's Rocky North, they'll find another way. We really won't.
Yeah, one of the ways in which you're getting some funds.
I'm taking part in a experimental clinical trial for an untested drug. I can't talk about what that drug's for or anything, but it's all medicinal, I promise. But I'm taking part in that, which will give us a significant addition to the budget. One of our ADs is climbing a mountain, just to raise more money. The crew we've got, the cast we've got, they're prepared to do just about anything. We're putting on a live event later in the summer. A bit of a throwback to what Rocky North used to do. We're going to have an auction, a raffle. All is going to perform and sing and headline the event. We're going to have some magic tricks. We're going to have comedy sketches, and we're going to have a disability dance group. We've got a signing choir as well. So because this project is very, very steeped in the SEND community as well. We work in partnership with a special educational needs and disabilities college called Derwent College. The show is being produced by us, but we film it with them, and the partnership, whilst it's not Henry House specific, it does lean over into Henry House an awful lot. We provide opportunities for their special educational needs and disabilities young people to get work experience on the set of Henry House, working alongside professional actors. And what I'm worried about most, as you mentioned at the top of the show, Brad, Luke's got a career in film. He doesn't need us for that. Orla Jones has got a career in film. Peter Purvis has had one already. He wants another one. But the special education needs and disability students in the part of the world we're in, a rural area, not blessed with a city like a Manchester or a Liverpool or a New York or a London on their doorstep, where opportunities are, that would fall over themselves, is that if we don't come back, I genuinely fear for where these SEND young people are going to go. So it's all on the line at the moment.
It's so amazing, and I can't imagine the frustration of being so close and things that you cannot control.
Well, that's it. There's no way of preventing this from happening again. Like, we could get I probably shouldn't say this so people don't money. We could get all this again, and someone else could break their wrist in two places. There's no way of stopping that from happening and protecting against it.
Major movies have dealt with things like this. It's very common for big budget movies to have reshoots, and they will forever talk about how, and I'm reaching here, there was a movie called Exit to Eden that starred Dana Delaney and Rosie O'Donnell when they were still trying to make Rosie O'Donnell a movie star. And she talked about how Rosie O'Donnell lost a lot of weight for the movie because she was wearing some pretty revealing outfits. And she talked about it in her comedy. It's like, then they said, "Oh, we have to bring you back for reshoots." And he's like, "I've put on 30 pounds since I stopped because I didn't need to dress like that." She's like, "You can see it. I open the door, I'm 140. I walk through the door, I'm 170. You can tell." There was the Fantastic Four movie that everybody hated, rightfully, a few years back, where Kate Mara, you could tell the scenes, they did massive reshoots, and you could tell where in the original shots where she had her hair dyed blonde, and then the reshoots where they had her hair went back to her natural brown color, and she was wearing a wig. But those are movies with budgets of $50 to $150 million, where they even have the best special effects people and they can also pay a lot of money so people don't have to take other work. And when you're doing something independent, you don't have that ability. You can't fly Peter Purvis in. You can't put him up in the best hospital that's 10 minutes down or whatever it is. So I can only imagine the challenges. And again, being so close and knowing that continuity will errors. You can't use high tech. You can't take it to industrial lights and magic to remove the cast on anyone's right. Yeah.
Well, you touched on a really interesting point there. It's one of the sort of, not criticisms, because everyone's been great once they understood, but one of the questions that we've had fielded to us an awful lot is, oh, but the big guys, the big budget guys get away with it. So if no one criticizes them, I'm not going to criticize you. Actually, it's the other way around. Because we haven't got a reputation, because we haven't got the backing of a Universal Studios or a Disney or Marvel or whatever it might be, the people will go and watch those films, and even if the continuity at times is awful, they'll forgive it because they love and they've invested in the franchises and they trust those people. With us, we don't have that fan base. We have to make a better film, arguably, than the big boys do, because we don't have that to fall back on.
People who are fans of and who watch independent work, and it's not fair, but they tend to have the harshest eyes for stuff.
Yeah, they are critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be really clever. I know probably one of the most famous independent filmmakers ever is Kevin Smith. And Kevin Smith, his first movie, Clerks, he had very little money. He basically financed it on his credit cards. It took place in a convenience store that they could only film at night, so they had to come up with some conceit at the beginning of why the gates or the metal blinds were always down. And that was like one of the first scenes, is like, oh, somebody put gum in the lock so they couldn't open up the gates or the blinds. So, but you had to do that because they would show that it was in the morning and then it was dark outside, the fandom, the people who go to those sort of independent films are just going to make a big stink about it.
Well, yeah, and he shot it in black and white because he couldn't afford the lighting to shoot it in color. Like, this is, Clerks is often cited in the same sort of conversations as like Reservoir Dogs and things like that, and it's not. I think Clerks is probably the closest to this because, yeah, we're having to put it all together ourselves. We don't have anyone behind us. We've gone one by one to local businesses and asked, could you give us a couple of $100 towards this? Could you help with this? And it turns it into a big community-driven project, but also, yeah, you're building it out from scratch. There's no fallback of knowledge of where this money's going to come from, or anything like that. And yeah, it's just for kind of knowledge and reference.
I was going to say, on to what you just saying there, Luke, what it has done now, like you said, there's no guarantees of if we're going to get to come back in September, but not one single person has wobbled. And I have to say, it's all right for me and Luke to be like, yeah, we believe, because obviously our reputations are on the line, so it's in our own interest to believe. If you want to look at it cynically, but from the runners, makeup artists to the main cast members, look at Orla, who's been our poster girl for the last 2 years. If this doesn't happen, she's going to look stupid as well. The mindset and the mentality of every single part of this team is all of them to a man is just, we're going to find a way. Like I said, we don't know how we're going to find a way, and believe it or not, we've just had a contribution to the crowdfunding campaign while I was saying this sentence.
Oh, I know you did. It was me.
Oh, Brad. Oh,
I didn't do a lot because I tried to sign up for a different one, but I'm in the United States, and I got to go back and find out which one's in the United States. But I did make I just because I thought it'd be good, because I looked up while you're talking. I looked it up, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'll donate $1 now, and later when I can view which ones, because I think it'd be cool to have a maybe a Zoom call or something from someone on your cast.
absolutely, yeah, you can do that. I mean, there's Zoom calls on there with Peter Purvis. That's an option. From anyone on our set, Brad, you could even Zoom call Luke if you really wanted to. He's not there every week, but we'll make sure it's one that he is. But yes, but going back to that point though, and you donating like that is again, it's case in point, is the mindset and the mentality of one group of people all determined to make something happen is a very inspiring thing to be part of. And quite honestly, if we do get through this and we do make this pilot, I think that we will have fonder memories because it went wrong than if it had gone completely right the first time round.
Oh, absolutely! It's like a wartime community vibe. The kind of all in this together community kind of feeling. And I hate how much we joked about this the other day. When things go wrong, for some reason, I really enjoy it. And there's a little bit here of trying to put this all together. I'm kind of like, yeah, no, this is because deep down I know that this is going to work out. I don't know how, but trying to figure out how to get from A to B is interesting. Don't give us more hurdles, guys. But it's as for reference, as production manager, my role is mostly I sit about and wait until Gareth rings me and says something's gone wrong. Can you fix it? And then this had to happen on the week I was off. I was in a place called Kent in England on a different film, and I got a voice note from Gareth. And I kind of snuck out to listen to it, and it was like, Peter Purvis has broken his wrist. We're going to have to postpone filming and then do it all over again. And I fully had to listen to that and then go, I'm not allowed. I can't think about this until I'm back in my hotel room because I've got a job to do today. it was very difficult just filming this other project, being like, oh, everything I've done for the past 3 months has been wasted whilst getting on with stuff. But I mean, deep down, it's not been wasted as well. You will, over time with our crowdfunder and everything, also see clips from what we already filmed because, we've got 2/3, 3/4 maybe, of a pilot shot to a professional standard. We're going to use that to give you the strongest example of what you're investing in. And it's also, having been in the editing and directing shoes on other projects before, you're often sat there in the edit thinking, oh, I wish I'd done that better, or I wish I'd got this angle, I wish I'd asked the actors to do this, yada, yada, yada. The one advantage of this, and believe me, there's not many, but the one is we get to do that. Gareth can sit there in the edit and go, oh, I wish I got a close-up of that, and know that we're going to do it all again, and that he can get that close-up.
Yeah, it's the ultimate dress rehearsal.
Yeah. The most expensive dress rehearsal as well, but...
Yeah. Like I said, we haven't planned this, but no one ever would. But there are positives, and I think when it first happens, like when Luke got that voice note, and when it dawned on me and Orla, and we had the conversations on the phone with each other, and not afraid to admit that both of us were choked up and tearful at the time because we never give up, and it was like, well, if we're giving up, then and we weren't really giving up, but at the time it felt that way. It felt like we were letting everyone down, and that moment when it hits you. You can't really describe it. It's like to go back on something you swore would never happen. If you said to me even 24 hours earlier, oh, tomorrow you're going to cancel all the rest of filming, I would never have believed it. I would have bet any amount of money that I will never do that. And 24 hours later, there we were doing just that. So whilst there aren't many positives, but you have to stop feeling sorry for yourself quite quickly, and you have to think, right, how are we going to fix it? How are we going to claw out of this? And being able to produce a trailer to what Henry House could and should have been, and hopefully will be, as proof of concept, hopefully we'll see us get even more donations because they can actually see it for themselves. We're not just sitting here saying, hey guys, like most crowdfunding campaigns, invest in this and I promise you I'm going to make a film or a TV show. Most of those guys can't actually show examples of the TV show they plan to make, and we can do that. And that does make it a rather unique selling point.
This is a little bit for my own edification, but I'm sure we have listeners who are intrigued by this as well, because you're presenting this as a pilot. What's the goal? Do you have, once you get the pilot completed, I have faith that you'll be able to get the funds and put together something. You have a really solid concept. Do you have a venue where this can be shown and hopefully the right people see it and it gets picked up? And do you have an idea of where you would want this program to go going forward?
Yeah, well, we've got two answers to that, which kind of work alongside one another. The reason it's been shot as feature length, because there has been some sort of question marks over that. It was like because the show itself would be hour-long episodes, a 10-part series if we get everything we want, an hour each time. So the pilot is essentially 2 episodes put together. It's sort of a double bill if you like, set at Christmas, because it's essentially a Christmas special for a show that's not been seen yet. And we've done that because anything said at Christmas, you immediately grab people. There's immediately that kind of, everyone wants to see that do well, and there's that goodwill factor that creeps in. We're going to be submitting it to the likes of, it sounds mad, but because of where it's based in Wrexham, As I'm sure a lot of your listeners will know all about, there is a very, very successful documentary called Welcome to Wrexham on Disney Plus, all about the Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney takeover of Wrexham Football Club. So Disney are working in the area, working very, very closely with a lot of the same people we are. So given the Wrexham links, and there's nothing set in stone yet, there's been no guarantees of anything. We're hoping to involve the football club. We're hoping to, by association, get to a point we can have that conversation with Disney, is that you've got one Wrexham TV show, but what if I was to tell you about another one which is kind of linked? We're going to be filming scenes, which is this is definite. We're filming scenes for Henry House in the Turf pub, which features in the documentary, for instance. So we've already got that crossover already. So whilst Disney seems the most ambitious and most deluded of places to start, for us it's also the most likely, which is a bit insane, but that's where we are.
Well, streaming services are spending money and they're looking for content. You talk about Disney Plus, and it was insane. Well, here's a little bit of trivia. Here's a trivia question for you guys. What is the most viewed program on Disney Plus?
Ooh,
Ooh, that is a good one. I'm hoping it's Welcome to Wrexham.
yeah, I would have said something like The Mandalorian, but it could be like The Simpsons or one of the things they've picked up from elsewhere. Maybe like How I Met Your Mother or something. I honestly have no idea.
The Mandalorian was my pick, but it seems to.
Well, Mandalorian's number 2. Luke, you said it. Simpsons is number 1. Because of just the huge amount of content, because it's 30 plus seasons. And though The Simpsons, and I say this is The Simpsons is my number 1 all-time show, I lived through, unlike you guys, I'm older than The Simpsons. So I actually remember a time before the show. I remember that season 3 through 8 or 11, where it was literally the best show in the history of television. It was an amazing program for that 8-year period. While people universally agree that it is not the show that it was, and although it's not a ratings juggernaut as it was, that show will go on forever. It seems, and there's no intention of stopping making new episodes because of content. And streaming services are very much looking for content in a lot of ways. When you have sort of a neat idea that is able to put itself in a conversation with a buzzy program like Welcome to Wrexham, and so something that sort of is a little bit of a throwback feel-wise to sort of those comedy dramas, and also getting a charismatic, engaging lead character and lead actress. You have a lot of things. I know it's not an easy world that you're maneuvering through, but you have a lot of things that provides buzz and makes it very digestible to the general public, including having an iconic performer, especially Doctor Who goes through very interesting ebbs and flows, and having Peter Purves, who was part of the show, part of Doctor Who, so long ago, but Doctor Who's a buzzy show again.
Oh, absolutely, and he's not the only Doctor Who actor we've got attached. Am I right? Is it 5 now, or with the possibility of 6?
Let me think. I'll just reel off the ones we definitely got, and then we'll get an idea. So we've got Peter Purves, we've got Annette Badland, we've got Mark Benton. We haven't mentioned him; he's another big star over here. We've got Simon Fisher Becker, we've got Colin Spall,
and then there's 2 maybes, isn't there?
Yeah, so 5 to 7 Doctor Who stars in it, and of course. Going back to Disney, and obviously a lot of your listenership being in the States, Brad, Disney have now got Doctor Who, so it ticks another box.
I think the concept's great. Again, I'm a big believer in Luke. Gareth, we've talked before. It's been I've always loved the way that you talk about and present a real love for what you do. Guys, this has been amazing. I need you to plug your pluggables again. Tell everyone where they can support Henry House.
Sure. So the crowdfunding campaign that Brad actually donated to on the show, which we're hugely grateful for, you can find that on Indiegogo by searching for "Here's One We Nearly Made Earlier" or Henry House. Either way, that should come up. Our socials is the best place to find us at the moment. All the updates about the campaign are on there too, which is on Facebook. It's Rocking Horse Media. Instagram, it's rocking_horse_media. I'm going to let Luke do the Twitter because I can never remember it.
Twitter is RH Media ENT. We need to make them a bit more consistent, but we've got bigger problems at the moment. But it's you can find all the stuff there. The website's currently in development, but if you go to rockinghorsemedia.co.uk, you can find links to our social media and the crowdfunder at the moment on the landing page, whilst the website is being sorted by our new marketing team, because we've got a marketing team now. That's how exciting things are. But it's and then Gareth, I'll leave you to plug any personal socials, but you can find me on my new site askseekknock.co.uk or as Ask Luke Allen on Twitter and Instagram.
All I could say to add on to that, because there isn't really a difference between Gareth and Rocking Horse, to be quite honest, would be if you're interested in getting involved or you want to support in some way, and for whatever reason the crowdfunding route isn't for you, drop us an email at info@rockinghorsemedia.co.uk, and we're always happy to hear from people who want to support us.
I'll be posting the links to all that. I want to make sure that people support this endeavor. Folks, let's all get on the ground floor on this. I think this is something that has really amazing potential. And again, I'm a believer in these guys. And, Luke, Gareth, we already talked that Cosmic Geppetto is winding down, but we got a good amount of episodes left. And I want to have you guys back before we wind this down. And hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit more about the next steps, where you're at on this project. This has been awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. We'd love to come back. Love to. Absolutely.
That wraps episode 279. This is Logan Mendenhall, and I'm also cooler than my dad. Big thanks to Gareth and Luke, two great guys doing cool work. Next time on the Cosmic Geppetto podcast, Dr. Anna Peppard returns to talk about iconic comic book couples. Till then, in the words of George Harden,
see you in the funny pages.
Subscribe to the Cosmic Geppetto podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever quality podcasts can be found. Rate and review us while there. Follow us on Twitter at CosmicGPod, and we will follow you back. Unless you're a jerk. We don't follow jerks. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cosmic Geppetto. We love hearing your ideas for upcoming episodes. Email us at cosmicgeppetto@comcast.net.
All right, you guys like that?
Yes.
Okay.